Okay, so hi. I still don't know any intro for these, but I have thoughts on Metro 2033 Redux. I really liked Metro 2033, the original. Not to say I didn't like the Redux, but the original Metro 2033 had a choice in the end where you could, and I'm just going to straight up go into this because this is the crux of it. Because, I mean, Redux was an improvement on the mechanical and visual side of it, no doubt. But the story side of it is what I care about. The choice in the end of the original Metro 23 was to either bomb the Dark Ones or spare them. Because I don't think they planned on making Last Light at the time. I very much dislike the fact that they took that choice away in Redux to make it canonical with Last Light. I get that there's a canon ending to how it goes now because Last Light's a thing, but they could have kept the choice in there for people who didn't want to play Last Light or for people who wanted to keep that ending in, because I think the way they changed some things up that didn't quite make sense either. Like Artyom more sees the Dark Ones trying to help throughout the original Metro, and they kind of changed those scenes a little bit. Not to the point where it seemed like anything was really amiss. It's just they changed those things to the point to make it so a little less like the Dark Ones were trying to help and just more that they existed. They do show them still like trying to hold out a hand, but I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know. They got rid of that ending, and the original ending of sparing the Dark Ones and letting all that happen was so much better because it seemed more hopeful than just bombing the fuck out of them. And I really dislike the fact that they forced that ending change on it. As for the gameplay and stuff, the game played amazingly. They did a really good job with how that worked out. They did. I mean, there was some fucking bad bugs. That last video is just me being salty as fuck. I got really mad about that bug in the end with the randomly appearing Nautilus that just kind of like appears inside Artyom's ass and just eats him alive in one hit. That was just a weird bug, and I read so many things on it and how it was like, oh, it's the result of picking up this AK-47. I never picked up that AK-47. It's a result of this. I never did that. A lot of people thought it was like an anti-piracy measure, but I'm playing it through Steam and I've bought it legally, so that's a thing. Like, there's a ton of different like theories on why that bug exists. It's just a fucking bug and it sucks. I eventually did get past it, replaying like an hour and a half of the game, but whatever. So not all on the technical side is perfect, but it's still the gameplay itself, which I guess is a bad word now, gameplay. The way the game plays, the feeling of the combat and everything, it all feels a lot better in Redux than it did in the original. The shooting was subpar. I liked it for the atmosphere and the story, and the world felt very lived in, but I could not give a fuck less about that shooting. That made that game really hard. And like inconsistent damage too, which I get. Like, you miss. I understand inconsistent damage more than anything, but when I'm headshotting Nautilus and with the revolver, sometimes it takes one hit, sometimes it takes two. Like, just make the head all one damage point. I can understand if you're shooting them in the chest with a shotgun, maybe it misses vitals or something, but just fucking let me blow their head off if you're gonna do that. And speaking of the world is what really drove Metro home for me, because the world for it kind of really inspired a lot of Hunted, which I talked about in the playthrough, but it feels very lived in. Like those metros when you're in, especially in the metro you start in, and all of them really, they feel very, very lived in, and they're very there, and you have that was a stupid sentence, but they exist. They feel like they're real, like you're actually in them, because there's people everywhere, and they're kind of dirty and they're kind of noisy, and like everything seems realistic. You hear, like, you walk past things, you'll hear people fighting or people having sex, or like it all feels very complete, and it feels very, very lived in. And I just really, really loved the way that the world felt in the metros. Outside of the metros, it felt very desolate, which is supposed to. It's a fucking decimated version of Russia, which Russia's already pretty desolate. Drop a few nukes on it, and suddenly it is the apocalypse. But I just really liked the way that it felt and looked, and I really enjoyed that game. So good on you, A4, I believe it's 4A or A4. Whoever the developers were. Also, play that game if you ever do. Play it only in Russian. Do not play with the English voice actors. They are all terrible. No, they're bad. They're bad. Steve Bloom, I love you, man. You're in everything. You are horrible with a Russian accent. Most of the 4A games, most of them are really not great in terms of the over-the-top shitty Russian accents. Play it in the original with subtitles, because it's originally meant to be in Russian. It's a piece of Russian literature that has been turned into a game. So it's definitely worth giving a play, though. I might someday do Last Light, but not fucking right now. Yeah, there's not really a ton to say about it. It's kind of just a first-person shooter. Although I did hear somebody talk about how it's supposed to be survival horror. Never got that feel off of it. I mean, it's creepy in spots, but there was never a time where I'm like, oh no, this is true survival horror. It's a first-person shooter. I don't know who was saying that it was survival. I don't know why this person was saying it was survival horror, because it's fucking not. And I don't ever think it was meant to be. That's something that people seem to really kind of conflate with things. Like, it's a first person, like, people will say, well, it's supposed to be survival horror. It's like, no, there's true survival horror, and then there's the shit that, like, people label as survival horror, and then there's the stuff that marketing labels as survival horror. But there's not really, like, unless you're playing as like unless you're playing something like Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil, yes, that is survival horror. Resident Evil 2, Silent Hill, those games are all survival horror. But a first-person shooter with, like, customizable shotguns, it's not survival horror, and it's not meant to be. But I don't know. Anyway, well, that's about all I got right now. Have a nice night, everyone. I'll see you.